Hello everyone, this is Jabr Ghanem again with more stuff on the Old Testament, and today we officially start with this next section of Genesis, which the Jews, the Hebrews, when they study it, they call it Lech Lecha, which means let's get going. So let's get going with Abraham, and this comprises chapters 11 to 17 of Genesis, which is what we're supposed to study this week. Now, let me start today. So this is going to be an intense few days as I go through these chapters because there is a lot to learn about Abraham. In addition, we have the book of Abraham and the Pearl of Great Price. We have two chapters as a part of the study. And those are an amazing contribution because in the Old Testament, Abraham just shows up all of a sudden. We have introduction to the genealogy of Shem, then we learn about Terah, then Abraham is introduced. So we don't have any background on Abraham, which is provided for us, thankfully, by the Pearl Great Price and by the two chapters we will study today. So let me, in this segment, I'm just going to do an overview of these chapters 11 to 17 and Abraham 1 and 2, the state of the world at the time, some introduction to the main characters in the story, and then in the following segments, I'm going to unpack all of the information. So that's the plan for this segment, for Lech Lecha. Let's go. So let's go with it. So if you remember, the last couple of segments I spoke about the Noahic covenant, the covenant that God with Noah after he destroyed the world and just saved Noah and his family, and specifically his three sons in the Tibah, in the coffin, in the ark. And so they emerge, and God made with them a covenant symbolized in the rainbow, in the seven colors. And I talked a little bit about the elements, and this is basically based on the Jewish interpreters and Jewish lore, but I like it. The Noahic covenant, they said, was about seven elements, and if those are established, if all the sons of Noah follow them, then they will be blessed. Remember, this is sort of a royal grant. If the children are are following what their father followed, then they will be blessed equally. So, it's all about courts of justice. It's all about refrain from blaspheming God. So, establishing courts of justice, refraining from blaspheming God, refraining from idolatry, refraining from sexual perversion, refraining from bloodshed, refraining from robbery, refraining from eating meat cut from living animals. So, there is all of these things. And when we read the Pearl of Great Price, the story of Abraham and the Pearl of Great Price, we get a sense of the world. So Abraham in the Pearl of Great Price basically introduces himself as, starts by saying in the land of the Chaldeans. Now this is a very interesting introduction because actually in the Bible in Hebrew it doesn't say the land of the Chaldeans. Um it's actually highly doubtful that we're talking here about the same Chaldeans of Iraq. The Hebrew word used is Kasadians, the Kesdaniyin, and the word Ur means sort of a furnace or something that is white hot. It's so hot it's white, huge heat. So might indicate an area where it's too hot, or it's called that for some reason. But we'll go with the Chaldeans for now. Just know that this is not in the biblical text. It says Kassadin in the Hebrew. So he is this man in the land of Chaldeans in Ur. Ur is an old word, and its Semitic origin. It means land or city of. Kura It's from Kura, it means city of, the city of the Chaldeans. So he is desiring righteousness. He is desiring the priesthood. He is desiring more knowledge of God. He wants to keep the commandments of God. And he talks about himself as a high priest. So that is Abraham presenting himself. Now, remember, we're still living in the covenant of Noah. People have the priesthood. People know about the gospel. People know that knowledge exists in the earth. But the problem is that not many people are following it. People are doing all kinds of things that they should not do, and this is interesting because they are worshiping idols. The worship of idols is everywhere. So humans, by doing this, are breaking one of the articles of the Noahic covenant, which is not worshiping idols, just worshiping God alone. They are sacrificing humans to those idols, so they are shedding innocent blood, which assumes that there is no just courts, because you can't just shed human blood without a court. Those sacrificing human idols, they're sacrificing virgins. This is associated with sexual purity, so there is indication that they are breaking any of that. And the amazing contribution of the Pearl of Great Price, remember we're talking 1830, is that in the Pearl of Great Price we have this knowledge that there was this sacrificing humans to idols in the ancient Near East. And there is an excellent paper about this, about human sacrifices in the ancient Near East, that talks about this as in Ur, in Ur, in the place mentioned in the Bible. And and there are many papers like that, but that's something mentioned in the Imperial Great Price long before such knowledge was discovered. Long before. So we know that humans are doing this, sacrificing to idols, worshiping someone other than God, and so the knowledge of the gospel, the knowledge of God, is going away from the earth slowly. And on top of that, starting with Nimrod, we know from the story of the Tower of Babel, we know that humans have characters like Nimrod, just warriors waging war. They are trying to defy God. They are trying to rise to be gods using their knowledge and skills and technology. So humans are doing all of these things. The idols that they are sacrificing to are interesting because one of their names is Elkanah, and wherever you see that in the Bible, that root El means God. It's where the word Allah in Arabic comes from. It means God. And Kana is also an ancient Semitic root, means the possessor or the acquirer. So this is a God who acquires, and in this case, he's acquiring the blood of young, virgins and human sacrifices. And there is a God Shagril, and again, there is that word eel, but then there is that first part, which is Shagar, which is a Ugaritic ancient god associated with the cycle of Baal, another god of the Canaanites. So there's all kinds of things like this in the Pearl Great Price that came through Joseph Smith, that are just incredible for the time they came in. Now, there is an interesting bit also about the state of the world in the time of Abraham, where it talks about the reason why Terah, Abraham's father, has taken on the worship of idols. It's because, remember, the descendants of Ham, so Canaan, was basically cursed by Noah, and so they couldn't have the priesthood. But here is the interesting thing that comes through in the Pearl Great Price. It talks about the first Pharaoh of Egypt. The first Pharaoh was a righteous person. Uh, in chapter 1 of Abraham, verse 26, it talks about Pharaoh being a righteous man, and he established his kingdom in justice and righteousness, and he sought hard to imitate that same order of the fathers during the patriarchal reign of the fathers, even what was in the days of Adam and Noah. So he was trying to sort of have a priesthood order that imitates, because he knew that was the right way to go, but he didn't have the authority. So things started going downhill from there, and basically they started worshiping idols and offering those human sacrifices. Now, as a result of this situation in the earth at the time, there is a famine, which seems to be the pattern in ancient scriptures, where whatever the people have gone astray from worship of God, they somehow are punished. And in this case, there is a famine. And the famine actually kills one of Abraham's brothers, and that's what causes the family to get up and lech lecha and get that order to leave. And so they leave, and the order is to go to Canaan, to inherit Canaan. So this is the beginning. This is God sending Abraham to inherit the land of Canaan and establish a covenant with him. So the next thing we see is we see the Abraham and Lot story. Then we see the wars extend into where Abraham is. The famine extends where Abraham is, so they have to leave to Egypt, and they stay in Egypt for a while, and then they are just in this because of the famine, they are in this constant movement. But Abraham is being blessed, and then Abraham gets finally, after all of this travel, to make the covenant with God. And then we have the story of Hagar and Ishmael. We will have the story of Sarah and the angels. So there's a lot that to unpack here, but here is a summary of what I've just said. That world after the flood has basically disintegrated again, and there is chaos. And so God had made a promise that he would not destroy the world, but the world is, there is still punishments, there is still famine, there is still suffering, people suffering because of their own actions. And we know that, it's not God necessarily just saying, let there be famine. We know that when wars happen, when man causes war, then land is destroyed, livelihoods are destroyed, and that's probably what's causing the famine, just the evil of man, not necessarily God inflicting it. But out of all of this chaos and suffering, God we still have like the silver light. We still have this covenant with Abraham by which all of his descendants will be blessed. And we know that's a large amount of people. The stars, as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sands on the earth. So that's where it's at. We're gonna unpack then in the next few segments. So I'm gonna unpack it segment by segment and go through into some fine details in this fascinating part of Genesis. So see you next time.